Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. We have a special guest with us. We are talking Jets with Tigo, and we are talking the 2024 Jets schedule. It has been released. There's been a lot of anticipation, and it is out. And Jet fans seem split. Half seem to love the schedule, half seem to hate the schedule, but we're going to break it down. 6 primetime games, 3 games in 10 days to kick off the season, and no one better to do with me than Talking Jets with Tygo. How you doing today, my man? Are you ready to break this down? And are you excited for the 2024 schedule finally being released?
Absolutely. There's always this weird limbo, like post draft, where there's not really anything to talk about because there's nothing like you get to talk about the players that we drafted, but that's what we've been doing for the past 3 months. So it's just like you kind of just sit here and wait. But now we actually have things to have a conversation about: the schedule, how do you attack the season, and all of that stuff. And so I think I'm in that group of people that I'm lukewarm on the schedule in the way that it is laid out, because I was a really big fan of the opponents. I liked the group of opponents that we were going to face, but the way that it played out, it seems to be another situation like last year, which is gauntlet early, cool off later. And it's just like, I don't know how I like that.
Yeah, and it also seems like the NFL agrees with you because they've actually told everyone, yeah, we're basically doing this with the Jets because they kind of owe us because Aaron Rodgers' Achilles decided to explode 4 plays into the season, which again is frustrating. And I understand general NFL fans that aren't Jet fans might be frustrated and asking, well, why do the Jets have 6 primetime games, especially when you think about it, the Jets are going to have 5 of those before Halloween. And look, with the schedule we were talking about a little bit earlier, this kind of reminds me a little bit of the Sam Darnold. If you remember when Sam Darnold first started, it almost was exactly the same, where the Jets started off primetime Monday Night Football. They'd have 6 days, would play game 2, and then they were on the short turnaround playing the Thursday night game. Although this year, I think the advantage is they get San Francisco, which is a tough game. We'll break that down a little bit more specifically. They get the Titans on the road, and then they get the Patriots at home. So at least that Thursday night game is at home. But I do sense some of the frustration with the Jet fan base, seeing that the first Sunday home game isn't until the 29th. But overall, I feel like if the Jets were going to play these 3 games in 11 days, I kind of like how it set up a little bit. What were your thoughts, especially with that gauntlet to open the season with the 3 opponents that they got with San Francisco, the Titans, and then wrapping it up with the Patriots at home for Thursday Night Football?
I think one thing is I dislike very, very much that our home opener is week 3 and that it's on a Thursday. I think that as Jets fans, we got screwed on that front, which is just absolutely insane. But I don't mind opening up against San Francisco week 1 at San Francisco, because you can do a lot of prep, because you have a lot of time now. You can go out to San Francisco a week early and adjust the timing for your sleep schedules and things like that. You can do different things, whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that you're in the best position possible. But also, I'm going to take this as a good omen, because the last time that the New York Jets played San Francisco week 1 of a NFL season, we've matched up with them, I believe it's 13 or 14 times, and I believe we're 11-3 is the whole record of the Jets versus San Francisco. But the last time we faced San Francisco in San Francisco week 1, it's actually the only time we faced them week 1, was in 98. And I don't know if a lot of people remember it, but in 98, that team went, I believe, 12-4. And that was the year that we made it to an AFC championship game in Elway. That Elway beat us in the championship game and went on to the Super Bowl. And we lost in week 1 against that San Francisco team. So I think it's one of those things where I think you and I kind of agree, which is you have to play San Francisco eventually, whether it's in the first 6 weeks, the last 6 weeks, the middle 6 weeks. At some point in time, you're going to have to face them. And then again in February, if you think this team is a Super Bowl team. I'd rather get it out early, and then you get to get right games, right? Tennessee has a whole new coaching staff, new offensive coordinator, second year quarterback. Same thing going on with New England, but it's first year quarterback, first year offense, a head coach. Like, you got all of these things. So it's kind of, hey, we're going to give you a really, really hard game. Here's a get right game. Here's a couple of get right games to get you going. And you can even continue that into the Broncos week four, which is just like, yes, it's Sean Payton, but it's Bo Nix or Zach Wilson. So, like, come on. So I do like that it starts hard and then it goes back to normal and ramps up.
Right. And I think the Jets actually with this schedule got a couple of nice breaks. Now, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong. First, I think we knew they were going to have to go to the West Coast twice. They get the San Francisco game out of the way early. If I'm predicting it, because you have the almost mini bye now after the last preseason game, they'll probably spend the whole week out there and travel out there for the San Francisco game. When we were breaking this down, when I first got the tip that it was going to be the 49ers, I actually thought the Jets were going to stay on the West Coast and play San Francisco and the Cardinals, get those out of the way. But even the Cardinals trip isn't as bad because it's coming after the Thursday night game against the Texans.
Yep.
So they have a mini bye in there. So the two West Coast trips, the Jets aren't on these short weeks. They're not getting shortchanged with time, which I think is a nice advantage. And look, after San Francisco, I understand that the gauntlet is of the days more or less. But when we talk about this schedule compared to last year, the gauntlet was not time. It was the quarterbacks. I mean, when we saw the schedule, they got Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, like back to back to back. And when you look at this schedule, I really think that this is going to be a schedule that's going to put this coaching staff, especially the defensive staff, on display because they're playing young quarterbacks. You got Will Levis week 2. You got the Patriots. You got the Broncos. You got Sam Darnold, all back to back to back, sandwiched in between San Francisco and Josh Allen. So, like, when I look at the quarterbacks on this Jets schedule, this is a schedule that if you're the defensive team players on this team, your eyes should be lighting up, especially after you went through that gauntlet of great quarterbacks last year.
It's the entire schedule is filled with average quarterbacks or first or second year quarterbacks. And the only exception to that rule are two quarterbacks, in my opinion. And that is Matthew Stafford and Josh Allen. The great thing is that the New York Jets defensively have Josh Allen's number. We know how to play against Josh Allen, and we do it exceptionally well. And then you have to play against Stafford and the Rams, and it's an excellently coached team. And Stafford's old, and we have no idea if he's going to be healthy by week 16. And then 2, they're coming from the West Coast for a 1 o'clock game. So, like, they're going to have to be dealing with the travel and the stuff. I think you're absolutely right. If you just scan, not the teams, not the history of the teams, just scan the quarterback positions, our defense should have been exceptionally, exceptionally happy once they saw what the schedule looked like, because these are teams that we can absolutely dominate defensively.
And especially you were mentioning it too, like when I look at the quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks the Jets are going to face on the road outside of the division, because I think Josh Allen's the best one you're going to face. He's in the division. I mean, you guys can tell me your opinions in the chat, but I think Josh Allen's the best quarterback on the schedule that they're going to face. But when I look at the road schedule, the best quarterbacks they're going to face on the road are Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, and that's debatable. Kyler Murray, will he be healthy in week 10? And then you got maybe Trevor Lawrence, depending on how that's going in Jacksonville. I mean, you get CJ Stroud, who the Jets dominated last year, by the way. I mean, that was so funny. The Texans were beating the brakes off everyone except the Jets threw that curveball in there. They get them on the Halloween short Thursday night game at home. They get Anthony Richardson for the Colts at home. They get, like you were saying, Matthew Stafford at home. So
at 1 o'clock, that's a very key piece from the West Coast at 1 o'clock.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even the other West Coast team, the Seahawks, and again, not the same quarterback caliber, but they get them at 1 o'clock as well. And after a bye game, and I'll say this, I still worry about the Seahawks a little bit after the bye, but the two things with the bye I like is, number one, it's not an AFC East team after the bye, which always gives me heart palpitations. But I also like they got a week 12 bye, because it felt the last 2 or 3 years the Jets got a week 5, week 6, week 7 bye.
I believe
really
it's 5
early.
of the last 6 years we've had a bye before week 8.
Yeah, and it just felt like the Jets didn't need the bye at that point, and I kind of like that, again, they're getting these mini buys with the schedule early, and then after the week 12 bye, it's kind of a nice reset and focus you for the last 2. If the last 3 of those games are going to be against the AFC East, including 2 against the Dolphins. And the one thing I do like too is they get the Dolphins on the road December 8th, and they finish the season at home finally. When was the last time the Jets actually finished the season at home in front of the great fans at MetLife Stadium? So I think that that's also going to be a nice thing as
Especially
well.
against Miami in January. They're
Yeah.
not a winter team, so they have to come up and deal with, cold weather, like in our stadium. Jet life will be rocking. I think you're absolutely right. There are a lot of things that I like about the schedule, and there are a lot of things that I dislike about the schedule. But overall, I think another thing that's very important, because if we look at the post week 12, so the way that I break out the schedule, I break down the schedule into thirds, right? Because it's 18 weeks. You have the first 6 games, the next 6 games, and then the next 6 games, right? So in that first third, we've got like a ton of travel in terms of just overall miles, because you have to go to the West Coast, then you have to go to London, right? And so that's not all that great. But if you look at from week 7 to almost to week 18, we stay on the East Coast almost the entire time. The only time we leave is Arizona week 10, but we stay on the East Coast the entire time. We stay in our own time zone, and that's not something that we have to deal with all that much. So adjusting sleep schedules and getting people ready is going to be really, really interesting, because of the fact that we only have to deal with time zones 3 times, and we get all of that done before the last 8 weeks.
Yeah,
so
and that Cardinals game you were mentioning too is great, because it's a 4:25 game on the road, which is also very helpful, and it's off of the mini bye, and that's the longest trip they're going to have after London. San Francisco. London's going to be a tough one, but I kind of like too that they got the mini bye after London, where they're playing Monday night against the Bills the following week, because again, I know teams have that option where they can do that bye. And the other thing too is, again, this is not just for this year, but it kind of feels like the NFL, especially when we get to 18 games, which is going to happen sooner than later, they need to have 2 buys in here with some of these guys. But the other thing I will say that I'm really happy about with this schedule is, number one, the Jets aren't doing the Black Friday game again. And number 2, I'm really thrilled they did not get the Christmas game, because that to me was a game that was terrifying me, because I just felt the Jets were going to get put into that game. And we talk about the short weeks and players getting used to it. Players at this point are used to the Thursday night games. They're used to the Monday night games. They're used to the Sunday night games. Asking them to play a Wednesday game, and then because they're playing a Wednesday game, they have to play a Saturday game the week before to make it work, and trying to do that, especially with your last 2 or 3 games of the season. I'm glad the Jets didn't fall into that mess on the schedule. That was the biggest thing I was concerned with. Was there anything that you were concerned with when the opponents were announced with the Jets schedule coming out that you were relieved didn't actually happen to the Jets when the schedule was finally released?
Other than the Christmas game, because I agree with you, I did not want the Christmas game. I was okay with almost everything, because the one thing I didn't want happened, which is 2 Thursday night games. I didn't want 2 Thursday night games, because that is an option now, but we got 2, right? One against the Patriots and then one against the Texans. But outside of that, I was cool with a Black Friday game. I didn't have any kind of quarrels or qualms with that. And I don't really have much The two things I didn't want was 2 Thursday night games and an early bye. I got one
Right.
of the two things. That's it. Everything else I was kind of cool with.
Yeah, and I was kind of surprised the Jets didn't get either the Black Friday or the Thanksgiving games, to be honest with you. Again, I get they're doing the early games to make sure Rodgers is playing. But one other interesting thing that I was really trying to break down with this schedule was I think when we look at schedules, we look at the quarterback matchups.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel pretty good with Aaron Rodgers in most of these. But playing devil's advocate, if Rodgers has to miss some time this year and Tyrod Taylor has to start a couple games, to be honest with you, even still looking at this schedule, if you were to tell me that Tyrod Taylor was the Jets starter, there's still a lot of games where I would feel pretty good with Tyrod Taylor starting. Now, again, if he has to start on the road against the Cardinals, might be a little tricky depending on Kyler Murray. Obviously, you were talking Matthew Stafford coming into town, but got to see what his health is at that point. Overall, I still think even with the quarterbacks this year, I think the Jets lucked out because last year they just had that gauntlet of great quarterbacks. And even this year, you get a lot of these young quarterbacks early in the season. You get the Patriots early in the season. You get the Broncos early in the season. You get the Vikings early in the season, where it's not like you get them later in the season where they've had 8-10 games under their belt and they're starting to get used to the NFL. You get a lot of these young quarterbacks early. So I do think that also broke right for the Jets with the schedule.
Even with the Patriots or the Vikings or the Broncos, who all have these young quarterbacks, we have no idea if they're going to be starting by that time, which I think is another great advantage because, like, week 3, I don't think Drake May is starting yet. I think you're still on Jacoby Brissett by that point if you're the New England Patriots. Week 4, it's probably Bo Nix. I don't think Zach is going to beat out Bo Nix, especially since Bo was a first-round pick. But it's, like you said, it's week 4. It's early. We have no idea what's happening in Minnesota, if they're going to actually run it with JJ McCarthy or if they're going to run it with Sam Darnold. And either way, by week 5, we know how to beat Sam. And if it's not, it's JJ McCarthy. He's a rookie. Like, you can bully a rookie. I think the biggest takeaway with this is that I don't really care. You want Aaron Rodgers on the field, of course, right, because of how special he is, like truly and objectively, right? But if he does have to miss time, I'm not worried because nobody on this, because I always default to, okay, Josh Allen's a great quarterback. Don't get it twisted. Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback. Don't get it twisted. But they have to face our defense.
Right.
That we have the best defense in the NFL. I'm not going to hear from any other fan. It's the New York Jets. They are the best defense in the NFL. We are the gold standard right now. And the thing that makes me confident is not, oh, we have to face you guys. No. You have to face our defense. Tyrod Taylor is good enough to put up 20 points. Are you good enough to put up 20 points on this defense?
Well,
that's
we know
the question.
Well, we know Nathaniel Hackett isn't good enough by himself to put up 20 points. So I trust Tyrod. Yeah. But yeah, that whole story last week was crazy too. And again, I went off on that and I basically said the Jets weren't going to get anyone at this point because no one's going to take a 1-year contract. But like you said, like the Jets are a talented team. I think they're a better team than they were even last year. And this team still won 7 games with arguably the worst quarterback play in the National Football League. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to be great. Aaron Rodgers could be average. And if he's above average, look out. It's really exciting this year. And look, I would say if I'm a betting man, I'd hammer the over of 9.5 games. I really think the Jets, I'm not saying the Jets are going to be a 12, 13 win team. They could be, but realistically, if they can stay relatively healthy, because there's going to be some injuries throughout this season, if they can get to 10 wins, I think that's pretty doable. And I do think you could potentially even win this division with 10 games. Like, again, I get experts with the Bills because Josh Allen's the best quarterback in this division. I think they've lost a lot of pieces. I don't think they're as great. But look, if you want to say that they're going to be the favorites to win this division, I can get it because of their track record. The one thing I can't stand is everyone saying Miami's better than the Jets right now because Tua played 17 games. I don't see that happening again. And look, I just think there's just something. I think they're really going to come back down to earth this year, especially
Mm-hmm.
because last year even was a great example. Once again, they can beat up all the crappy teams. They cannot show up against the good teams. And I do think their schedule is going to be harder, especially being a wild card team last year.
I totally agree. I think the other thing, I'm not hearing it that Miami's better than the New York Jets. They're just objectively not. Odell Beckham wasn't able to do anything impactful for the Ravens last year, really. And okay, you added a weapon. That doesn't really matter all that much. Two, you got lucky that Tua stayed healthy all of last year. Is that the standard? Is that the new standard? Is he going to stay healthy all year? Or was it just a fluke year? We have no idea. You are more than likely going to lose Tua at some point, and your defense got worse in a big way. Losing Vic Fangio, losing Wilkinson, like they objectively got worse. So don't come at me if you're a Miami fan. Your team got worse, and you're going to have to come down to normal. And here's the thing. Miami only beats up on bad teams. I think their record with teams above 500 is, I think they're like 3-8 with teams above 500. Like, it's absolutely abysmal. And I will relax, I guess is the best way to say it, with the Buffalo Bills, because the reality is it's all talk right now. It's all conjecture right now. The New York Jets don't really have anything to hang their hat on outside of the players on paper. But the games aren't played on paper. They're played on the field. And so they should be the favorites to win the division because historically, recently, they have been. But I don't, like you said, it is not outside of the realm of possible. If every game goes the way that it's supposed to go, the New York Jets can win 14 games. That's real. Because, like, let's say you split Miami and Buffalo. So there's 2 losses there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you lose the opening week to San Francisco. The only other team on the schedule that you can say we could, like, let me correct that. There's no other team on the schedule that you can say that we should lose to. Should. Right. Could lose to? Of course, you can lose to any team in the NFL at any point in time, right? 7 teams last year lost to Zach Wilson. 7. That number should be 0. No, Zach Wilson shouldn't beat anybody, but 7 teams lost to Zach Wilson last year. So
and
can we lose?
2 lost to Tim Boyle.
Yeah. Like it's this whole idea of, can the Steelers in their given day beat us? Sure. Can the Texans? Sure. Can the Rams? Sure. Can the Jaguars? Sure. Should they though? No. We should be the best team on the field for 13 of the matchups that we face this year. The only things where I will hear an argument, San Francisco, because they just went to a Super Bowl. I'm not going to discount them and who they are. I'll put us tied with Buffalo because Buffalo actually won the division and we haven't done anything there. And that's like really it. That's really it.
Yeah. The one I think the biggest loser in a sense for the Jets schedule is kind of the fans, really, especially if you're a fan of the 1:00 kickoffs and you want to tailgate in the morning. I feel like they are the biggest losers of the schedule because, again, it's great the Jets are in prime time. They're going to have a lot of primetime home games. But when you look at the schedule, the Jets, the first 1:00 kickoff the Jets will have at home will be September 29th. So you have to wait 4 weeks. And then if you like the 1:00 kickoffs at home, your next one is going to be December 1st. So you basically can go from wearing shorts and a t-shirt outside at MetLife to you might be bundling up for that Seahawks game in week 13. So again, I think a lot of the frustration with some of the fans, maybe not the scheduling in terms of who we're playing, but more or less if you're a big fan of, you want to, have a normal Sunday at MetLife, it's a little bit trickier because most of the games are going to be the Thursday night home opener is a primetime game, then Monday Night Football primetime, October 14th, and then Halloween is going to be a Thursday night football game as well, and then November the 17th. So basically, the Jets go all the way from week 4 to 13 between their 1:00 games, which, again, for fans can be a little bit tricky. So I do feel bad in that regard. But it's also nice to see the Jets on primetime, because how long did we wait for a Sunday night game? What was it, 10 years to see the
Mhm.
Jets on Sunday Night Football? And we don't have to worry about being hijacked by Taylor Swift this year, which will be very nice and refreshing.
Yeah, I think the best part about I think I'll say this about fans that might be upset is you can either be the New York Jets, where you're going to play 1 o'clock games all year, but the team is ultimately disappointing, or you can have this team that the nation wants to see, that is building bandwagon fans, that is exciting to watch, that has a shot to win. Like, yeah, I have 2 kids under 2, and I love the 1 o'clock game because that falls right when both of them are sleeping, and it's great, and I can kind of watch the first half of the game in peace and all of that stuff. But you know what? Give me a primetime game. The kids are asleep by 8:15 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things, like, I know I'm in a different position. I'm in Florida. I watched my first home game ever was last season, was week 1. It was my first Jets game I ever got to see in person. Flew out to go watch that. And so I get it that I'm not, but you got to ask the question is, are you willing to sacrifice the comfortability of watching 1 o'clock games for the fact that this team is actually finally exciting, for the fact that this team doesn't just have hype from the fan base, but has hype from outside of the fan base coming from other places in the NFL? And when I originally heard that comment of the New York Jets owe the NFL, that's why we have a ton of primetime games early, I was like, we don't owe the NFL nothing. And I was just like, you know what, though? Good. Shove the New York Jets down America's throat as much as possible. Let's just show everybody who the New York Jets are, and that we're here. We're not here to play. We're here to win games, and we're going for a Super Bowl. That this isn't a joke. This isn't just the same old Jets. And so I love the idea of just shoving Jets content down people's throats as much as possible. Screw the comfortability, screw all that stuff. I do still hate the 2 Thursday night games, but like just shove just Gotham green in at everybody. Or is what's the new green color called? Is it still Gotham green, or is it back to Kelly green?
I think they're still doing the Gotham green shade. They have a specific, I know the white or spotlight white. Although to be fair, I love the new uniforms. My question is what games they're going to wear the black jerseys in. I'm guessing it's going to be one of the primetime games. Although, the funny thing about the jerseys this year is I'm just glad that they have nice black alternates, because I was afraid they're going to do something like the New York Mets did with their City Connect grays, or do something really outside the box. But I will have to look at it. But again, this is why we both have Jets channels. And again, you can check out his Jets Tigo's channel. I have the link in the description, because we, of course, love shoving Jets content down your throat. But here's an interesting question. Let's shift gears here. And I think this is a good one for the comment section, for the fans watching at home, and for you. Part of the fun of the schedule is, I think we look at games. Obviously, we want to go to the home games.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we want to take a trip. We want to go somewhere fun every year. Last year, I think the big one was Vegas, because obviously it's Vegas. You can't go wrong with that. But looking at the schedule this year, if you had to pick a game to go to, what would be the one place you would like to go visit? Because I'm already having this debate with some of my other Jet fans. One of my good friends, we're debating what game we want to travel to. I think Pittsburgh's on the table because it's in the middle of October. And the other one is Jacksonville, just because it's going to be Jacksonville in December, which will be a nice change of pace. Not that we necessarily want to go to Jacksonville, but the warm weather at that point in the season isn't the worst idea in the world either.
I am planning on going to the Jacksonville game because I'm here in Florida. It's easier to get out to the Jacksonville games, and I refuse to give the Miami Dolphins a single penny of my money. I will not watch a Jets game at the Hard Rock. I refuse. But Jacksonville is relatively close. It's a day trip. You go out there, you watch the game, you come back in the same day. It's a nice time. But if you're in the tri-state area, if you're up there by MetLife and you're looking for a game to travel to, I think this might be short notice, obviously, but if there are 2 games that you're traveling for, the London game is out of this world because the environments of the English fans is different. London is awesome. White Hart Lane is one of the best stadiums in the world. So being able to go out there and watch your team play and a bunch of fans that you didn't expect to be there, that's a really, really cool thing. But when you just look at the schedule, the only away game that really comes out and goes, wow, you got to go to this game is the Steelers one, because Heinz Field, I refuse to call it a Cruiser Stadium or whatever it is
Oh
now.
God, I hate that.
I
I don't know why
refuse.
they did that. That's one
Well,
of the
because
dumb
Heinz
things.
didn't want to pay up. A Cruiser paid a ton of money. It was all money, man.
Oh man, I get, but some stadiums, like some advertisements are perfect. Heinz Field was perfect. Ford Field is perfect. Like certain cities, it's like the perfect advertisement. So,
Yep.
and of course, Pittsburgh, I think there's a lot of really great stuff to do. I will say, maybe it's just because I went there when they lost 53-14. I will not go back to Foxborough because that was a rough game. And also, it's probably one of the worst stadiums. It's a beautiful stadium and facility, but getting in and out of Foxborough is, if you think getting in and out of MetLife is bad, I will say try going to a game in Foxborough. That will say, hold my beer. That is absolutely horrendous. But the big question I have for you is, Jacksonville, will you be getting the pool seats for that game?
Not in December.
I don't know. Is it supposed to be like 75 degrees in December?
Not in December. Look, it might be. Here's the problem. Let's say you pre-purchase the pool seats and you do get there and it's 58 degrees. It can happen. It can happen.
Yeah, it's true.
Or even if it's not 58. Like the people, like here's the thing. People, I've been in Florida for so long because I used to live up in Jersey. I used to live up in New York. I used to remember what winters are like, but it's been like 15 years. I don't remember what winters are like. So I gotta get a hoodie on for like 60-ish degree weather. And so the thing is pool weather is anything above 95. Like right now, today, it is 99 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Today's the perfect day to go jump in the pool. 75 degrees. I'm in my shorts. I got probably a thin long sleeve because I'm scared of skin cancer. But that's it. I'm not trying to go into the pool at 75 degrees. There's probably a nice breeze coming in from the east. I'm just hanging out. I don't want to go to the pool.
Yeah, today's a golf day. Today's the day to go, crack a couple on the course, lose a couple balls. My score is always by the balls I lose. It's not because I'm not getting under par. I'm just going to see, like, if I can keep most of the balls in the bag, I'm having a good round for me. So, but yeah, I really like how the Jets schedule broke down. I'm excited for it. And look, I think there's a lot of hype around the season. I think the Jets have great new uniforms. Aaron Rodgers is back. They've added great pieces. I think this is an exciting rookie class. And I mean, it could be worse. I mean, we could have a New Jersey like the Giants, which again, that yesterday was quite the reveal for the Giants. And it was kind of funny just seeing how many Giant fans hate that throwback, which I thought was really funny to see. But look,
so ugly.
And I think that's part of it too, is the Giant factors. I think the NFL looks at the Giants and says, look, they're not going to be a good team. And really the two spotlight games for the Giants usually are week 1, and it's going to be Thanksgiving against the Cowboys. And that was, to me, I actually was surprised that was the Cowboy game on Thanksgiving this year. I thought it was going to be a little bit different, but I think that that's part of the reason the Jets are getting so many primetime games is because of the media market. They know the Giants aren't going to be good, so they're going to put the Jets in to try to get the New York market as much as possible. And also look, too, the Bears, who are finally interesting. The Bears got a lot of primetime games with Caleb Williams this year. So a lot of this, I think, is the markets is why the Jets are getting so many primetime games. So when people are complaining and saying, why are the Jets getting so many primetime games? Well, they're the best team in the New York market, and the Giants – I think the Jets probably took 2 or 3 games that usually would go to the Giants in these primetime games because they're not interesting and they're not going to be a good football team this year.
And the other thing is we got a bunch of primetime games because we're an interesting team.
Right.
Like, we have the best defense in the NFL. We have arguably the possibility of having one of the better offenses in the NFL if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. Like, if the team is healthy, Connor Hughes said it was like the New York Jets team doesn't have a single hole on it. And he said this before the draft.
Right.
The New York Jets roster doesn't have a single hole on it. And that's true. We have a bunch of ifs.
Yeah.
If Aaron stays healthy, if Tyron stays healthy, if Mike Williams stays healthy, like that's it. But objectively, we've addressed those ifs by drafting Olu, by going and getting Malachi Corley, like bringing in Tyrod Taylor. This team does not have. We're an interesting team. And that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah, there's no holes on this team. Like when you go compare the roster to last year, I feel like every position's either a push, it's the same amount of talent, or it's gone better. Like even the quarterback room, I think it's gone better. I feel the running back room's gotten a little bit more interesting, but I still think it hasn't lost any talent. The receiving room, I think, is better. And the biggest thing, too, for me is the offensive line. The offensive line, too, yes, there's questions. But last year, I feel there were more questions last year. Last year was like last year at this time, Dwayne Brown was our starting left tackle. And our debate was, well, how many games is he going to play? We were also wondering, too, okay, what's going on with Mekhi Becton? I'd rather have the questions on our offensive line we have this year compared to what they were last year, because a lot of it was like, well, these guys even going to play? Are they even going to, like, what are they going to do when the
Why
Jets
is
have the
Billy
first
Turner
tackle?
getting left tackle reps?
Oh God. Yeah, like we were all looking as Max Mitchell's going to be the savior, and coming in like before the draft, like there was the storyline was like, well, Carter Warren's going to be the swing tackle, and again, nothing against Carter Warren. I still think he's in the plans long term, but man, like if Carter Warren's like your break glass in case of emergency, you're like, ooh boy, that can get interesting. But one final thought before we let you get out of here today. Yes, the offseason and the draft feels like it's over, but there's still some moves to be made. We've seen the Dolphins add OBJ. We've seen Tyler Boyd sign. Is there a move you'd like to see the Jets make before the preseason? Is there anyone lurking out there on the market that you'd like to see this Jet team add to this roster as a final piece?
Yes. And that is Dalton Risner.
Ooh, I like that.
Am terrified of the interior of the offensive line. I was a big proponent going into this year that we didn't need to take the tackle. I was a big fan and still am of Carter Warren and Max Mitchell. I feel like they've gotten a really, really raw deal. I think everybody on the offensive line has gotten a really raw deal because you're having to face 8-man boxes because no one is respecting Zach Wilson to beat them with their arm, right? Well, you have to respect Aaron Rodgers. You have to respect Tyrod Taylor because they can beat you with their arms, right? And so I thought that's a little bit more interesting. But the depth behind Elijah Vera Tucker, I'm very worried. I love AVT. I rotate out these jerseys. I actually won a signed AVT jersey. It's in that closet. I don't know why that's not one of the jerseys that's hanging. So I love AVT, but I wanted him to play tackle this year because it would have been easier on his Achilles. Asking him to play guard, I'm worried about some sort of re-injury or something like that. And if that happens, Wes Schweitzer is the man that's coming in. And I don't know how confident anybody should feel with any of that.
Yeah, Schweitzer's a better name for a beer than a backup guard. But
Exactly.
My opinion is I'd actually like to see him maybe bring back 2 former Jets. Connor McGovern is someone, again, I feel gets a raw deal. But look, if they can get him for the right price, can play 3 interior positions. If he had a spot started guard, I'd be more than happy. I'm a little surprised he hasn't been more in the conversation. Another guy, too, I'd still bring in Corey Davis. Again, I understand that a lot of fans are frustrated with him retiring last year, but the rumor was he was potentially looking to reunite with the Titans, but seeing what they've done with the receiving room, I'd bring back Davis for 2 reasons. Number one, I think he's a solid number 2. And the other thing is it allows you playing him on the outside. He's a great run blocker, which no one gives him credit for, but being that big X receiver on the outside, it allows Garrett Wilson to go inside. It allows Malachi Corley to go inside where they're at their best. And to me, having that depth, like I'd rather have Corey Davis on the outside than Alan Lazard at this point. Now, we'll see what happens with Lazard. Maybe with Rodgers, it's one of those things he's better by proxy because, again, maybe that's the problem with Lazard. Who knows? But he's going to be on this team next year. Everyone that's always screaming, cut Lazard, he's uncuttable at this point. You got to give him at least one more year. But Corey Davis is someone, if he's still interested in playing, I know Saleh has said it publicly, the door is open for him to return. I think he fits this team. He fits a need on the outside because, again, I know OBJ, there was a lot of hype around OBJ. But I feel this Jet team wants Garrett Wilson and Malachi Corley to operate more in the slot than on the outside, and getting a big buy like that helps alleviate that.
I think I agree with the Corey Davis, but kind of for the opposite reason. I think you could put Corey Davis in the slot. Corey
Mhm.
Davis and make his job easier so that he doesn't have to be that X, doesn't have to be that thing. I love the idea of putting Garrett Wilson in the slot. Don't get me wrong. That's the perfect spot for him. But the sad truth is that we have too many players right now that fit into that slot role where like that's where they're going to succeed. And we know Garrett can play outside. So let's just have him play outside. Now, if you want to put him inside in certain snaps, like do it, of course. Giving Garrett Wilson a free release is something that you should always be trying to do. But there's a lot of things there. Another name that I will throw out, the Jets have, I believe, had conversations, at least initial conversations with, is Micah Hyde. The safety. I would be interested in possibly bringing in another safety onto the team. Not necessarily as a starter per se, because I'm kind of cool with I'm cool with our safety room, but I'd like a fourth name that isn't Jarek Bernard-Converse. We haven't seen him on the field. We have no idea what he's going to be, but also I believe he's a 6th round pick. I don't necessarily want to bank on a 6th round pick being safety depth.
Right. The interesting thing with that is what their plan is with Quantez Stiggers, because I think most of us feel he's going to be a developmental cornerback, but maybe the Jets see him as a safety. I mean, we've seen them try to do this hybrid corner safety or try to convert a corner to a safety position. But I would like to see this team add another safety. I completely agree with you. Again, it's not that the Jets necessarily need to have great safeties, but you want to see at least a backup security option. As much as we love Ashton Davis, I still don't think Ashton's proven enough to be an every down starter. Tony Adams was up and down last year. Hopefully he's got his footing under him this year. The big one's going to be Chuck Clark, because as much as I really love Chuck Clark, it is a bit concerning coming off of a major injury like that. And look, was a consistent player in Baltimore. I love that trade when they made it, and I still think it was a great trade because they gave a 7th round pick for him. I mean, they gave up more to get him a reliable player than Zach Wilson got basically in return. So, I mean, that's another great question with the Jets schedule. Will Zach Wilson be the Broncos starter in week 4? Because I almost just feel like Sean Payton's just going to do it just to troll the Jets or attempt to
do it,
the Jets.
Please. Do it. I have no problem with it. Throw Zach out there. Like, man, what is that going to do? Throw at Sauce? Is that the game Sauce gets 9 interceptions? Like,
it might. I mean, Sauce, that would be a match because Sauce also has been tweeting about Mr. Wilson this week too. And, he's going from MILF to GILF this week, if you catch my drift. Sauce, there's certain players that shouldn't be on social media, but man, Sauce is so good on Twitter and social media. I just love that guy. And look, that's another thing I would love this offseason is if before we get to week 1, the Jets announce they've locked up Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner to long-term contracts. Because here's the thing, guys. If you're the Jets and you're Joe Douglas, lock them up now because they're only going to get better, and especially Garrett, because you don't think Garrett Wilson's numbers are going to go up slightly this year when he's playing with Aaron Rodgers as opposed to playing with, what was it? How many quarterbacks has he played with? There was a stat. Was it 7 total quarterbacks now in his Jet career? Because he's gone Flacco, Wilson, Boyle. Who else am I? I think there's been like a whole. Strevler. I mean, it's one of those like Browns jerseys you saw with like 20 quarterbacks on the back. Like that's basically what Garrett Wilson's played with, and he's still won Offensive Rookie of the Year. But look, I'm excited for this season. I'm excited because, again, I think this schedule brings up a lot of hype. There's obviously the league's hype with this Jet team because they're putting on pride time. And look, I think that this is a really exciting season to see how this team does. But look, I want to thank you for joining us here today. We definitely want to have you on as the season progresses. There's going to be a lot to talk about, especially because before we know it, we're going to have training camp and all the fun talk that comes out of training camp. But man, thanks so much for joining us. This is Talking Jets with Tigo. You can check out all his great work. Links are in the description. His Twitter, funny man on Twitter, man. You got to see all his fun tweets. And of course on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We'll have more content for you. And guys, if you're new to the channel, bash that like, bash and subscribe as we try to try to grow our Jets community. I'm Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk. We